and then, from the field of the future, a new king will come to save the world of the past. These words began every episode of King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, a syndicated kids' cartoon that debuted in September of 1992. In the series, when King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table are imprisoned in a cave of glass by Arthur's evil sister Morgana, the wizard Merlin must search through all of eternity to find new, brave, good-hearted heroes to protect the realm and defeat the treacherous sorceress. With warriors from literally every possible time period seemingly at his disposal, Merlin ultimately settles on an American football team from the 90s. Conveniently enough, not only is the team named the New York Knights, but the quarterback just so happens to be named Arthur, and his best friend, Lance. The 12 teammates are transported back in time to Camelot, outfitted with suits of armor and mystical weapons, and, now watched over by the Lady of the Lake, the Lady of the Table, they do battle against Morgana, her second-in-command, Lord Viper, and the villainous warlords, while trying to find the 12 keys of truth that will free the real Arthur and his knights. Alas, the New York Knights were never able to complete this mission, as the series was canceled after 2 seasons with, in what must have been a disappointment for the show's fans, no resolution to the overall story. While undoubtedly one of the strangest Arthurian adaptations to date, King Arthur and the Knights of Justice certainly isn't the only odd take on a legend to grace the small screen over the years. The 1981 CBS sitcom Mr. Merlin featured Bernard Hughes as the titular wizard, now living and working as an auto mechanic in modern-day San Francisco. Forced to take on an apprentice in order to retain his immortality, Merlin eventually finds his new charge when teenage Zack pulls Excalibur, now disguised as a crowbar, out of a bucket of cement. Clearly not as immortal as the wizard himself, Mr. Merlin would last only 1 season. In 1979 and 1980, Japan's Toei Animation would create an anime series King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and a sequel series, King Arthur, Prince on White Horse. While the first series would be a fairly faithful representation of Arthurian legend, Prince on White Horse cast aside much of Arthur's usual supporting characters, aligned him with new companions in a reworked futuristic setting, and featured such intriguing episode titles as The Magical Flower Which Takes Away Lives, Shocked, Bear Man Appears, and Frightful, the Spaceship That Hovers in the Sky. Both shows would last only 1 season. The 2002 Australian series Guinevere Jones, also adapted into a series of novels, concerned teenage Gwen Jones, who discovers she is the reincarnation of Arthur's queen, and, under the tutelage of the spirit of Merlin, uses magic to both fight evil and deal with the everyday hassles of high school. It would run for 2 seasons. Certainly, there have been more traditional Arthurian television projects, and it would be unfair to say all Arthurian TV has been unsuccessful, as miniseries such as BBC's Legend of King Arthur from 1979 and NBC's 1998 miniseries Merlin, as well as its 2006 sequel Merlin's Apprentice, definitely have their fans. The 2008 BBC series Merlin, not to be confused with the aforementioned miniseries, ran an impressive 5 seasons, and managed to bring its revisionist tale of an Arthur aided by a young Merlin to a true planned finale. But still, a quick survey of the landscape of all televised Arthur stories reminds one how difficult it is to satisfyingly and successfully bring a complete version of the legend to audiences. In fact, at the same time BBC's Merlin was enjoying its rare success, another American attempt was having a more difficult go of it, when in 2011, the Starz series Camelot, co-created by current Doctor Who showrunner Chris Chibnall, would only last a single season. Interestingly enough, for regular Failure to Franchise listeners, Camelot's version of King Arthur was played by future Mortal Instruments star Jamie Camel Bower, who only 2 years prior to Camelot also appeared in Rock'n'Rolla, directed by Guy Ritchie. And Ritchie would eventually go on to cast one of the stars of BBC's Merlin in a brief role when, 13 years after Disney's so-called true story approach to King Arthur failed, Warner Brothers decided to try their hand at bringing Arthur back to movie screens. Even if their ambitious, multi-year, ultimately unrealized plans ended up feeling more reminiscent of some of those failed TV shows. The year is 2017, and Warner Brothers is ready to launch a brand new, massive, 6-film fantasy action franchise with King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
3,
yes, the sound of another failed franchise launch means it's another episode of Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris. Real quick, though, off the top, I want to do two things. Number one, think back. It took us a few months, but think back to our original episode, our intro episode. And guess what? We finally got the movie about the Power Sword. And here we are. I'm very excited. It's the Power Sword movie. Also, one other thing.
Hashtag Power Sword.
Hashtag Power Sword. And one other thing. Which two knights were the first people at the round table?
Which two knights was it?
Circle and Circumference.
You're fired.
I know. I'm not even recording right now.
Podcast over. No, you're right. Well, we'll plow right past that, and instead we'll focus on the Power Sword aspect, because you're right. It's the second installment of Arthurian April, which means it's time to once again visit all of your favorite characters from classic Arthurian legend. Characters like Arthur, Mordred, Sir Bedivere, Goosefat Bill, Flat-Nosed Mike, Wetstick, Blacklack, and of course, everyone's favorite Arthurian character. I know it's yours, Chris. It's certainly mine. Kung Fu George.
You mean to tell me you never had a poster of Wetstick growing up?
No, I was always more of a Flat-Nosed Mike kind of guy.
You would be Flat-Nosed Mike.
I'm just happy after centuries of reading about Kung Fu George that he finally gets his moment in the sun here. Those are, in fact, all actual names from today's film that we're discussing. But this is still Arthurian April. We are covering a King Arthur film. In fact, we are covering 2017's King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. In fact, Chris, you have an interesting fact about the date of this episode in this film, correct?
I do. So Trev knows this about me, and some of our listeners maybe get a sense of it, but I somewhat subscribe to the simulation theory in a lot of ways. And for years, I've been texting Trev of Matrix moments that happen that are like bigger than coincidences. But doesn't matter. I don't want to get into it. The biggest one is, first of all, with Arthurian April, we decided to do this, fucking months ago? January we decided to do it?
Yep.
And we didn't realize that the 40th anniversary to Excalibur is actually this month as well. April 10th was what it was, so we forgot to mention that in the first episode. But this movie especially is its 4th anniversary to the day. So this episode is releasing on April 27th, and 4 years ago, this movie came out on April 27th. That's crazy.
Which one do you think people are going to be more excited about? The release of King Arthur: Legend of the Sword back in 2017, or the release of our episode today?
Honestly, maybe our episode.
I know. I was wondering if we'll have more listeners than this movie had. But why don't you give us a little breakdown of the movie?
Sure. It is directed by Guy Ritchie, written by David Dobkin, Joby Harold, Lionel Wilgram, and Guy Ritchie. It has a budget of $175 million. Domestically, first of all, can we just stop there for a second?
Yeah.
This movie cost almost $200 million for a King Arthur movie, which is staggering. It should never have happened. Domestically, it made $39 million, and worldwide, it made $149 million. This movie lost over $150 million.
Chris, until you said that, I only looked at the global total. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me the number again for domestic?
39 million.
I am flabbergasted. I mean, that is embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the nature of our show is we've done all kind of, failures to a certain degree, but whoo, baby, that's
And we'll get into it, obviously, for the opening weekend and certain competition it was going against. It's actually kind of funny that what happened. But 39 million is a catastrophic disaster.
Well, and in particular, let's just say it now. Let's just get this out of the way now. And we're gonna bring it up a couple times. But why this film is doubly embarrassing is, so the entire purpose of our show is to talk about failed franchise starters. Meaning, every movie we look at, there's this kind of sense that they were hoping for this to go on. Mm-hmm. But talk about falling on your face. This is a rare case where they really put themselves out there publicly about their franchise intentions with this one. And kind of the more infamous aspect of this film, in retrospect, is that this was meant to be the first film in what they promised would be a 6-film series. That is not what happened. Spoiler alert. But so I think it's just I wanted to say that right away because it's this thing that like hovers over the movie. Like it's kind of like all I really remembered about the film. When we get into our thoughts, I'll talk more about like my reaction to the movie at the time it came out. This was a first time watch for me, but I think it was for you as well, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about like why we got to a point where they would actually be thinking about a potential 6-film franchise. And I think every time we do this kind of lead in, or most of the times we do it, we usually bring up like another film because that's the way Hollywood works. Hollywood is very reactive. It chases trends. It tries to cash in on what else has been popular. And when we talked about 2004's King Arthur last time, we really have leaned heavily on the gladiator aspect. You actually contacted me after the episode and said, I can't believe we never mentioned Braveheart. And I think that's an okay point, but I think we would both agree it was really Gladiator that really led to that whole like wave of films like that. So I think this time, the two things I really want to pay more attention to that I think speak to where they're going with this is not Gladiator. That was the 2004, which went for that kind of grounded, realistic take of King Arthur. This one is definitely more in the realm of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because if you look at the history of this film, interestingly enough, this is something that Warner Brothers was interested in pursuing ever since the failure of 2004's King Arthur. So apparently they really had it up their butt to like make a King Arthur film and probably a King Arthur franchise. I was happy to read this actually because it felt like it lent more credence to us assuming that the first one that we talked about was meant to be a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
But it said that after 2004's King Arthur failed, they kept trying. They were plowing ahead with this attempt to really get an Arthurian legend film going. One of which was planned to be a remake of Excalibur, which would have been directed by Bryan Singer.
Yeah.
And I'm not sad that we don't have to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, same here.
The other that they tried to get going, and it sounds like this may have had like a little bit more traction, was a film called Arthur and Lancelot, which would have starred Kit Harington and Joel Kinnaman. Now, again, clearly if you're getting Kit Harington, it's because they're trying to cash in on Game of Thrones.
It's funny too because Warner Brothers wanted to cash in on Game of Thrones, but also didn't go with that because didn't think his name was big enough at the time. Isn't that so strange?
which I kind of agree with though. I think they're right. I mean, in terms of like, okay, we'll get back to that, I guess. But I kind of agree that like Kit Harington and Joel Kinnaman aren't necessarily marquee names. And if you're trying to start like a gigantic franchise, I would have had a pause on that too. But if they were like into that script or whatever, it's interesting to me that they just didn't try to keep plowing ahead with maybe different actors instead.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever the case, they dropped that project as well. And they were still like really pursuing this. And from what I understand, their next kind of idea was, well, okay, instead of just trying to make one singular King Arthur film, let's do a universe because everyone loves cinematic universes. You and I are both, unrepentant MCU fans, but I think we both agree that the biggest tragedy of the MCU is what it has done to Hollywood and this insane attempt for everyone to create the next big cinematic universe.
It's funny. I have a buddy, and he is so over all of this in every shape or form. Like he doesn't watch any of the new Marvel stuff. He's just so over it. And anytime you mention the word universe or even verse at the end of anything, he gets like I can like almost see him sweating through his phone, he just like is so angry about it. I even texted him today, something about something verse, and he was like, I've had a bad day today. Don't trigger me.
Well, it's strange too, because, you and I last time in the last episode talked about, how expansive Arthurian legend is and how, it's really tough to do an Arthurian movie because there's no single version of the tale. You have a lot of kind of, options to pull from in terms of, which versions of the King Arthur legend to use and everything. And I actually understand the impetus to look at King Arthur and think, boy, this would be a good trilogy, which is the other common thinking. It's everyone wants either a trilogy or a universe, right? And I can entirely see King Arthur as a trilogy because I look at a film like Excalibur, which I mentioned last time, I have a nostalgic love for, but I did say I don't think it's like a great film. And I think some of that is how much it feels like it's racing through a lot of mythology. And I think like, boy, if you could like play that out over a few films, might be a little bit better.
If only a movie didn't rush through everything it wants to do.
Yeah, well, and then just the idea of also just saying like, wow, this Arthurian world is so expansive that let's just build an entire universe out of it. It's a strange approach.
It's a gigantic leap. I really think so.
Yeah.
Like it is so delusional, complete delusions of grandeur. That's everything. I was like, when I was watching this, I was thinking that a lot. And I know this isn't the part. Well, this isn't the part where we review it, but I just wanted to mention that this is like typical Hollywood right now. Like,
well, in a lot of ways, right? This movie is like hubris, like personified, because like you have that element of it. Like you said, that's a crazy leap, especially for a property like King Arthur, which yes, everyone knows Arthurian legend, everyone's familiar with it. But you and I last time talked about how it's been really difficult to translate to screen, and you would have think after 2004s they would have realized, well, and obviously that's why they took the different approach, and they said, well, look, okay, at the same time King Arthur is bombing, people were still riding the high of Lord of the Rings. And in a post-Lord of the Rings world, we did get more fantasy. And then, of course, you get to a point where Game of Thrones becomes the biggest thing on TV. So they probably look at their properties and say, well, what's like the most famous like fantasy, medieval fantasy, kind of magic, medieval action mashup? King Arthur. So let's plow forward with that.
Let's do 6 of them.
Yeah. And they decide to pursue this, and they get, well, I guess we can say lucky, or I mean, maybe unlucky. I don't know. We'll talk about it. And that at the same time they're doing this, Guy Ritchie has himself been pursuing a King Arthur movie. Like he's wanted to do a King Arthur movie for a while. So they come to him and basically set him up in the position to be the leader of this film, and I would assume the entire franchise. From what have you ever looked into this? Was he intended to direct all 6? I think that's my understanding, correct?
Like everything, probably like at least the first couple, but by the time it probably got around to the 5 or 6, I'm sure he would have bounced.
I don't know. You got the Michael Bay Transformers,
Yeah, but he still only did 5.
That's true. You got me there. And the last one had King Arthur in it. Bam.
Oh yeah, it did too.
And he's another director who's been trying to make a King Arthur movie, so maybe he would have gotten a go at this too, or I don't know. But anyways, and okay, I just mentioned earlier when you said the thing about this, this is like Hollywood, and and I said this is Hollywood hubris personified. The other reason I said that is that what happens when they bring in Guy Ritchie as the director is the script that is eventually assembled for this is, from what I have read, a strange Frankenstein's monster style screenplay, which basically took elements from several of the Arthurian scripts that Warner Brothers had been developing over the past decade. So they kind of just like, this is a project that had been in development for so long. They had multiple versions, and we see this happen a lot, and very rarely ends up in strong quality. But they say, hey, pull a little bit from that one, pull a little bit from that one. And I don't know for sure, but I would imagine the reason there are so many writers credited on this film is just that they were all writers who wrote singular screenplays that were then kind of mashed together.
Well, they even said that once Ritchie and Lionel Wilgram, the producer, were on board, they started kind of rewriting on the spot as well, which happens with a lot of blockbuster filmmaking, but this one definitely felt, you nailed it by saying the Frankenstein monster. It was just an amalgamation of very unclear visions.
Well, and then here's the thing too, right? And as you said, we're not reviewing the film yet, and actually, I don't, you and I still haven't talked to each other about how we feel, as we always do, or as we never do, I should say. But I will say, like, part of the other issue with that is you're talking about it's this Frankenstein's monster of like different competing visions, and then on top of that, you plug in a director who, whatever you think about Guy Ritchie, has a very kind of clear, authorial sense. That's authorial, not arthurial. But that's a guy who has a particular vision and a particular voice, and so you add that into the mix as well. Into what this is, it's almost like if you're building a film this way, what we just described, it's almost like you don't want to get a director like Guy Ritchie, right? You want to get like a Brett Ratner or somebody who's just gonna take the script and like bang it out. Guy Ritchie has too much kind of directorial personality, I think. Do you agree? Like,
I agree to a point, but after this, he did Aladdin. And like, I know you didn't see
true.
Aladdin, but I saw Aladdin, and maybe Aladdin was let's rein this guy in after King Arthur's failing. So like that movie does not feel like a Guy Ritchie film.
Yeah, so, well, I think what you just said could be the case, though, right? That could be his like, oops, let me try this now, All right, so we'll get in. We'll talk more about the Guy Ritchie aspect of it, because I think that's there's a lot of interesting stuff about this film. But let's talk about casting. So I guess Ritchie's first choice for King Arthur was Charlie Hunnam. So nothing too compelling or shocking there. It's not, I didn't see any other like big names that were rumored, but I do know that one. Oh, did you have one?
Yeah, I thought he was up against a couple people, and the biggest thing that got him was Ritchie was really worried about his physique. Mm-hmm. And because he was doing Sons of Anarchy, and he was kind of gangly in that movie. Not gangly, but he's pretty fucking ripped in this movie.
He's very ripped in this, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was a concern. And Charlie Hunnam was like, "Yo, like I will get fucking beefed up. I will get yoked for this movie. Just promise me." And he's like, I think he threatened, like,
just
jokingly,
promise me we're gonna make 6 of them.
Yeah, exactly. But he somewhere I read that he told Ritchie that he'd fight the other 2 competitors for the role. Yeah. Take that as you may.
Have you ever watched the Judd Apatow show Undeclared?
I think I actually have a long time ago. It's only like one season, right?
Yeah, and like so Charlie Hunnam is in that, right? It's a very young Charlie Hunnam, and it's like where he was first kind of brought to the attention of like American audiences in particular. And he's really small, right? That's like really small, like he's a gangly kind of young adult. And I just was picturing this movie with like that version of Charlie Hunnam playing King Arthur. But perhaps a little bit more interestingly, the female lead, unnamed female lead at this point, we'll get into that, was for a moment Elizabeth Olsen was in talks.
Yep.
So we almost had Scarlet Witch herself in this film, but instead it ends up going to, and I apologize if I don't know exactly how to pronounce this, but Astrid Burgess Frisbee. Most people, I guess, would know her from playing Suzanne in The Seawall, not me, or the mermaid Serena in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger's Tides. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, sure.
In perhaps like the best like casting coup for them, I'd say, the one that maybe got like the only like real attention, I would say, Jude Law signs on to play the lead villain, and that makes sense. He's got a relationship with Guy Ritchie coming from the successful Sherlock Holmes films.
Did you see that Idris Elba, James McAvoy, and Colin Farrell were approached for the villain role?
Yeah, and that's one of those cases where Jude Law, Idris Elba, James McAvoy, Colin Farrell, you kind of can't go wrong.
Yeah,
Like I would hate to be like the person making that call, because I feel like all 4 of them are gonna like nail it out of the park. Whether that happened, we'll talk about. But I mean, in terms of the casting, I'd be excited if I had that as my choice in front of me. And then we get a bunch of other like people signing on and some cameos and stuff we'll talk about. But so the film, the players are in place, and then they, as I said, they kind of make what I ultimately see as a very silly mistake of going very public with this intention of it being a 6-film franchise. Do you agree that they just should have kept their mouth shut and never said that? It's weird because like I know why they did it, right? Because it's the idea. It's the same thing that Universal would do with the Dark Universe, right? Try to build the hype by just manufacturing it, by saying, look, this is going to be a series. This is going to be the next big thing. So you really need to come see this first one, because that's the way in, right?
You know what it is? I think it was because there was just too many. I think coming out the gate saying we're going to make 6 of these, and the 6th one, they straight up said the 6th one will be the team up one, like the Avengers. And I mean, I can understand just setting up a franchise, yes, like a sequel to, or but to come out saying 6, you kind of sound like a dumbass. like you're setting yourself up for such a disaster, and then also just it's kind of laughable. It's
that's my memory. So that's what I was getting at, right? So the reason I was trying to remember exactly why I didn't see this film when it came out, and I think that really is a big element of it, because so just to make clear now, I mean, I really enjoyed the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes films, and I quite enjoy Guy Ritchie in general. I mean, not everything, he's had some misses, but I like Guy Ritchie. As you know, I like Arthurian stuff. I liked the 2004 King Arthur. So I was thinking back to 2017 and like, why did I not only like not see this, but in my memory I avoided this movie like the plague. I just had like no interest in it. Wasn't even like kind of casually curious. And I think it's a double thing of the trailer, whatever trailer I saw didn't grab me, but also like many others, I was just so annoyed by that. Oh, we're going to do 6 of these. I just remember everyone like laughing at it and it instantly being mocked online. Like this movie had a target on its back when it came out because of that declaration. Well,
even premiering the trailer at Comic-Con, like it was just kind of so pigeonholed into that fandom, and like just so obviously trying to mimic geekdom. And it's like, I don't know if this was really the property to do that at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, let's do you have anything more to say about like the build up to this film or the lead up for it?
I think we could just jump into it. A lot of what I have to say, I think, will be talking about the film itself.
Sure. All right.
Listen to me. I need you to do as I tell you. I need to get you and the boy away from here. Protect the king!
Did you see everything you needed to see?
I saw enough.
Why is the water dropped? Why does the sword reveal itself now?
As your power increases, so do the forces that will oppose you. The born king will come. It is inevitable.
You felt it. The power. I've never had any power or any desire to achieve it. That's what all the fuss is about.
Don't worry. You'll soon understand what all the fuss is about.
Are you scared?
I think I can manage.
You should be scared.
Whatever it takes to hunt him down.
If I go down, you follow him. If he goes down, you follow me.
You want him to think big? Give him something big to think about.
You wanted the prophecy. This is your prophecy. The man who pulled sword from stone. Behold, your born king.
Okay, let me get to my notes. My hair. Remember that from V for Vendetta? They cut my hair.
I don't remember her saying it like that, but
It sounds exactly like that. Struggling to eke out an existence in Londinium's perilous streets, the orphaned young fighter and Uther Pendragon's only son Arthur is unaware to the fact that he is England's rightful ruler. Nearly 2 decades after his traitorous uncle Vortigern seized the throne, Arthur is now the only one who can pull out the legendary long-lost blade of Excalibur from a magical boulder. However, Vortigern is hell-bent on identifying and stopping him. Can the evil tyrant stand in the way of Arthur's true destiny? Stay tuned for the next 6 movies to find out.
yeah, and that is King Arthur. So, Chris, this was a first-time watch for both of us. Do you want me to share my thoughts first?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So again, you and I don't know what we're about to say. It sounds like it's pretty evident, but here's maybe the potential shocker. I sat down to watch this, as I said, expecting to absolutely hate it. And I can say that I walked away from it only not liking it, which I would say is at least a minor victory for this film. Now, let me be clear. I don't think it's a good movie. But when we talked about Anton Fuqua's King Arthur, you mentioned there was a point in the show where we were talking about how it's almost a great film. And you said, yeah, it's so close to being great. And it just doesn't quite get there. This is like the opposite version of that, where I find this movie like much more frustrating because I think you can see what Guy Ritchie is going for. And ultimately, I wonder if this is going to make sense to you. I think the biggest fault and the biggest flaw with King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, is that it's a King Arthur movie. And I feel like if there's a version of this film that removes some of the Arthurian elements, and I'll talk about this as we discuss the film, and I'm going to do one of my patented Trevor rewrites on this. Patented Trevor rewrite.
Trevor Snyder rewrites the movies.
I think there's 2 things that really sink this ultimately. One is the King Arthur stuff really gets in the way of the more interesting Guy Ritchie movie that's buried in this film. And the other is this is one of the ultimate examples of a Hollywood movie just completely sunk by spectacle and CGI bullshit. The first note I wrote, I have it right here in front of me, was at the very beginning of the film. I wrote tons and tons of CGI bullshit. That's the first thing I wrote. And I wrote that about 35 seconds in, if you remember the beginning of this film. And it continues to be a problem throughout the film. And every time it like deviates into that realm instead of what I think the film is actually doing an okay job of, it just completely loses me. And by the end of it, I was just exhausted. I was like frustrated and just annoyed. And I did not want to see 5 more of these.
So I can mostly agree with you, especially the thing that you said about this is King Arthur, the Arthurian stuff, like drags it down for sure. I think that's something that honestly should have just been totally exercised, like be a completely different movie at this point. Yep. But on top of that, I think this movie is bad. Very, very bad. And it is a 2-hour-long montage. That's what it is. It's terrible editing. It's cross-cutting. It's back and forth between time, between present, past, and future. It's exhausting. It's rapidly cut. It's all set up and no payoff. It is blockbuster filmmaking at its complete worst. Like you said, big bombastic CGI. Some CGI that looks worse than the Burly Brawl what came out from The Matrix Reloaded 14 years prior. Laughable characters, motivations. I gave props to King Arthur 2004 being like, it's kind of underwritten, but the characters like have this camaraderie that really you buy into. I would never follow this Arthur for the fucking winning lottery ticket. Like I would never ever follow this guy. His whole band of people they just suck. I don't know. I find it it's flat. I found, you know what it is? I found myself it was very difficult for me to pay attention. Because I just felt like my eyes were rolling in the back of my head when and you know what? I'm gonna say it now. I actually don't really like Guy Ritchie. And
that's what I kind of assumed that, and that's what I think. I think there's probably certain elements of this film that you hate much more than I do, and I think there's even certain elements that I like that you probably don't. And I think that speaks to it.
So you know what? Okay, so like I just recently actually watched Sherlock Holmes for the first time, and I thought it was like whatever. Like I wasn't a huge fan of it, and I think this is what it is. Guy Ritchie, yes, he has a distinct style, and I vaguely remember liking Snatch and Lock, Stock back when I was a kid. Like I do remember liking those movies.
I love them.
A lot of people know me that I don't like modern style in period pieces, like modern filmmaking techniques or like how do I say it? Like modern music. I don't like that because it just rips me out. It's like watching Lord of the Rings and then like a needle drops for like, Taylor Swift. I'm just like, I'm watching a movie. You know what I mean? Like
now, can I play devil's advocate and ask, what about Tarantino? What about when he does it?
It's strange.
Like, do you always hate it, or does it take someone who like really is like skilled at playing in that realm?
I would say, yeah, I guess it does. I guess Tarantino's really the only one that can do it in my book. Because my go-to example of this is funny. It's actually A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger. I hated that movie or the idea of it because they played like the hockey song, like they chant the hockey song in that movie or something. Like I can't even remember what it is, but it's a modern song that's in the realm of the world, and it drives me crazy. There's a
bunch of like modern music in that movie, I think.
Yes,
that's like the stylistic choices of it. Yeah,
and I just can't stand that. I don't know. There's like a big contemporary style that's placed on period pieces that all of a sudden I'm very aware that actors are playing dress up. And that's a personal thing, and I understand that, but that's why I think that Guy Ritchie has never really, really clicked with me. And I just found this movie was just it's just a montage, man. That's all it is. It's a montage of scenes cut, interspliced together. It's like that Frankenstein thing is exactly this movie. It's just pieces of other films thrown together in a blender, and it has no distinct anything to say. I don't know. I thought it was extremely frustrating. I don't think it's like a piece of shit garbage like Spawn, okay? But I just find it was like so whatever.
I'm going to push back on something you just said, and it's weird to push back on your opinion, but I do want to just call it into question because you said that you think the reason Guy Ritchie doesn't speak to you is that you don't like this kind of modern stylistic stuff when making a period piece. But I mean, and as far as I know, with Guy Ritchie, you've seen the first Sherlock Holmes and this, and I guess Aladdin, right? But everything else he's done has been contemporary. Right?
No, but I guess I'm not really specifically saying about Guy Ritchie. I think his cross-cutting editing style is fucking obnoxious as hell. And I think in this movie especially, it just was like draining on me. There's a scene that we want to talk about, and you know what? Let me just throw it down here. They're discussing a story with this knight or whatever. His name's Jack, and they're explaining a story, and here it is.
Now tell me a story about a girl called Lucy, a Viking called Greybeard, and some rebel graffiti dirty in these walls.
Are you writing a book?
Tell me every detail.
We had a quiet word with a couple of Vikings.
Get back! I said from the beginning, the very beginning.
I woke up.
Then?
Well, then I got dressed, I went downstairs, I saw the girls. Lucy was missing.
Where's Lucy? She's a good girl.
A nice girl.
She works here.
Then?
Then, me and the lads took care of a bit of business. A bit of housekeeping.
Everything as it should be.
That's the spoil from the boats.
Then?
Then we heard George had trouble again last night.
I meet me out the front.
Which George? King George, Angry George, George the Dragon? Be clear, Arthur, which George?
Our George. Chinese George. Kung Fu George.
George?
Art.
We heard he'd had some trouble with the Vikings.
Well, none of them are house trained.
I thought you'd warned them.
I did. They don't speak English good.
They speak it better than you.
Hold up, back up. Are you sure you didn't see someone else before you saw George?
Morning, Art.
We saw Mike. All right, Mike?
Mike the spy, kosher Mike. Which Mike?
Oh, you're giving me a headache.
Flat nose Mike. He was trafficking furs for our vicinity without paying a commission.
Quite a load. Bit bigger than usual.
Yeah, changed last minute. Just landed on me.
More is better than less.
More is always better than less, Mike.
More's definitely better than less, Mike. You've had a result.
I'm sorry, Art. It won't happen again, I promise.
You're all right, Mike. Why have enemies when you can have friends?
Where'd you put the money?
What money?
Money?
What money?
Did you hide it with the rest of your coffers?
You're all over the place. You can't keep your questions in a straight line. I'm trying to tell a story here, and you keep interrupting.
Like, isn't that annoying?
Chris, that is one of the scenes I liked.
Of course you did.
Now, what I will say is we only played a little bit of that. That scene goes on for 4 minutes, and that's the issue. That's the problem. But in general, when that scene started, I was actually kind of digging it. And this gets into, okay, so again, this is the disconnect here. So we both don't really like this movie, but seemingly for different reasons. Because I generally like Guy Ritchie, as I said. I really like Sherlock Holmes. I was actually I remember when you watched it and didn't like it, I was kind of surprised that you didn't like it, because I think it's like a really fun film. I don't know if you ever plan on watching the sequel, but I think like the sequel even, I don't know if it's as good of a film, but Jared Harris is like my favorite ever version of Moriarty on screen. I thought the Hans Zimmer score was awesome. I think that's like a very, very underrated Hans Zimmer score in the first Sherlock Holmes
Yeah,
one.
the score's great.
It's very different than other Hans Zimmer scores, which I thought was like really cool. But yeah, so I really like that, and that's why I was kind of surprised I wasn't super into the idea of him doing King Arthur. But that actually speaks to what the issue is here. And this is where I'm going to tie this all together right now. When I mentioned I was going to rewrite this.
Trevor Snyder rewrites the movies.
I was actually trying to think of that in my head watching this movie, and how at a certain point my eyes definitely started to like glaze over, and I was no longer into it. And I was wondering, like, why is it that I dig what Guy Ritchie did with Sherlock Holmes, but it's not working here in King Arthur? And this speaks to where I said it shouldn't be a King Arthur movie, because I think ultimately there's an interesting version of this that takes place in a world where Arthur is either dead or is just like missing, right? He's gone away. And Charlie Hunnam, maybe not Charlie Hunnam, maybe someone else, but whoever our main character is, right, is playing the hero of the film, who is just a regular guy who, as in this movie, right, is like a pimp. That's what Arthur is in this film. Is he's been raised by these prostitutes after, being hidden in this town.
Hold on. He was raised in that brothel, but when did you ever see any of that? Oh, during the montage that was 30 seconds long. Right.
I kind of like that montage. Again, like I think I'm into that, like those stylistic like jump aheads. I actually thought the montage was kind of cool and imparting a lot of information quickly, in terms of like showing us. And I'm not saying it's the best thing ever. Don't get me wrong. I'm just certainly not as annoyed by it as you are. I think some of those montages. Look, there are sequences in this film that I wish would have been contained into a sped up montage, like the entire middle 50 minutes. Maybe I would have much preferred to just be put on a high speed. But No, but what I was saying is a version of it where we have this guy, right, who is this just total like commoner, foul mouthed, low level gangster essentially, which is what Arthur is. He's a pimp, but a pimp with a heart of gold. Right, he runs a brothel. He really protects the prostitutes. He makes sure they are treated well. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what
this sounds horrible.
but okay, because remember you said you kind of remember maybe liking Lock, Stock, and Snatch, right? And those kind of movies, that's where Guy Ritchie always excels. I feel like every time he really, really stumbles, he's able to go back to that well and kind of pull himself back a little bit. People really love those two films. Last year, he had The Gentleman, which was pretty well received critically. When he plays in that realm of that kind of like those like Cockney gangsters, the fast, rapid-fire dialogue, that underworld of like gangsters, that's where Guy Ritchie belongs. And you can do that in a Sherlock Holmes movie because Sherlock Holmes is about a detective in a really seedy or old version of London that's like populated by people like that. It doesn't work in King Arthur because you have to keep on pulling in magic and Excalibur and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, what if this was just a movie about a gang like the kind of gangs we always see in Guy Ritchie movies, but in King Arthur's world, and leave out all the shit with Vortigern and Mordred and just have it be this guy somehow gets his hands on Excalibur. And we just play out the film without any like the extra like magic bullshit. I think that would actually be a much better film. And I think that's what Guy Ritchie was kind of picturing this as, but he ultimately had to serve the needs of it being a huge blockbuster franchise starter. And that's where it all falls apart because that interesting idea and the version of this that would work as a Ritchie film cannot coexist with all this other shit. Does that make any sense to you? Even if you're not into his style, like
no, it does. Like I had written down that this is the Middle Ages, not the slums of London in like a present day.
But
like,
see, I don't mind. Like I like that. Like you mentioned the thing about like, okay, again, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'll let you get back to that point in just a sec. But I'll say the difference between like say putting something like modern music in like a World War II film or something like that is King Arthur is kind of timeless, right? This is like the fantasy is ultimately timeless.
I disagree with that.
I don't mind like I actually don't have a problem always with like putting modern kind of especially stylistic flares. Modern music is one thing. I don't think this film kind of commits that sin too often.
No.
But I mean, modern like style stuff that doesn't bother me too much in a more period piece, and especially when it's like a fantasy piece. Fantasy, I think you actually have a little bit more room to play with that.
I mean, I just disagree. I don't know. I think a fantasy film, if it's set, like I know it's set in like this is actually set in the past. Like I know it's not. It's like a fantasy past. In some sense, but. I just kept reminding myself of like the King Arthur from 2004 and being like, okay, this is King Arthur. Like this is what I want to see from this type of movie. Like other than like, I think they should have added some magic stuff. I think that would have been awesome. But this one goes so far into, you know what it is? It was actually pitched this way too. It was Snatch plus Lord of the Rings. And that's what it feels like. And those two things just don't go together. They just don't go together. And but imagine this was happening in Lord of the Rings. Like there's modern techniques in Lord of the Rings, but it still feels like something from that world. I don't buy into this fantasy world at all because we're just talking like we do in the 2010s. We're just acting like we do. Like Arthur's like even costume is like a vest. Like he just looks like he walked off the slums of London in like the 80s or some shit. Like I just don't buy it for a second that I'm watching Arthurian legend.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. That's my point. Like that is unfortunately this movie's kryptonite. Is the Arthurian element is what's overwhelming it because you mentioned like imagine this is happening in Lord of the Rings, but also like think back to Game of Thrones, right? Think to a character like Bronn. This movie is basically a movie full of Bronns. And Bronn was awesome in Game of Thrones. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you can like actually allow just the movie to be about these kind of like these rascals, and then avoid all the extra bullshit that comes in, and especially in like the back third, I do think this would be much better if it was just like watching these. And don't get me wrong, there's other issues. I have issues with a lot of the casting. I have issues with the characters. You're right that the characters aren't very compelling. All I'm saying is why I
don't you dare say the bad things about Wet Stick.
All I'm saying is the reason I find this movie so frustrating is I see the potential for like actually a really cool version of this movie buried in here, and it peeks through every once in a while. And the moments for me where it does peek through are those like moments where I feel Guy Ritchie really take over. That montage at the beginning, which you hated, I kind of liked. The beginning of the scene where he's telling the story to Jack, I liked until it went on too long. So there's a lot of like Guy Ritchie flourishes where I'm like, oh yes, I wish the whole movie could be this. And then suddenly Hunnam pulls out the sword and turns into Burly Brawl Man, and I'm just like, oh, fuck.
Oh,
and
he
just
pulls
like
out,
lose it.
dude, and he pulls out that sword at 31 minutes of this 2-hour movie. Okay, and first of all, I felt like that was a little too short because I just didn't get this guy. It flies through his backstory. I have all I know is that he works at a brothel, and it's like who is this? Like this movie is on fast forward. And it's weird to say that because it's 2 hours, and I would say like the pacing is weirdly well done or good pacing, that you're not really bored, but you are exhausted by it, and it speeds through the interesting stuff. Before Arthur gets the sword, I want to be like, fuck yes, Arthur's getting the sword. In this movie, he's just a guy. And he's just getting the sword because why? Oh, it's because King Arthur does that. Oh, right. That's where we are. He jumps the line.
Well,
but I was just about to say, there's a line of people that are waiting to take the sword out, and he just cuts the line, and now he's an asshole. It should have been a guy that was like, if I want a glimpse of King Arthur, it should have been a guy waiting his turn or something like that, and reluctantly going, and just kind of like, I'll let the other guys try out. And he shows like no signs of leadership in this movie, during, or post the sword.
Well, I have two responses to that. And one of them is that you're speaking actually without realizing it to the point I'm making. And like I said, this is my issue, right?
Yeah.
Is that I don't want this character to be King Arthur. Because what you just said, where he's an asshole, imagine if that was just the point of the movie, right? Imagine if this movie was called King Asshole. And it was like, what happens when a complete asshole gets Excalibur? I want to watch that movie. Like the movie, and it has the same tone because like Snatch and Lock, Stock, those are movies about pieces of shit. And I think this movie would be awesome if it was just about pieces of shit given this powerful sword and how they kind of react to it. Instead, all of a sudden, you said this guy who's like not super likable throughout it. The movie suddenly just has to have him turn on a dime and become heroic at the end, and it doesn't work.
No.
The second thing I want to say, though, is it's actually even dumber than you said, because you said he's just a guy who pulls the sword because King Arthur has to. It's worse than that, Chris, because I want to remind you, the thing about this movie being on fast forward and on autopilot, which you're exactly correct about, is this is another one of the screenplays that requires characters to do stupid shit all the time that makes no sense. So, for instance, let's consider our villain, Vortigern, who is Arthur's uncle, his traitorous uncle who murdered his father, Uther Pendragon, and took over the throne. And in doing so, Uther basically, well, I want to save that reveal for a second. But Uther dies, hides Arthur. Arthur doesn't know he's the son of the former king. But at a certain point, the sword and the stone is revealed. And this is a challenge to Vortigern's leadership, because he knows that whoever is able to pull that sword from the stone will be the next king. So what is his reaction to that? Does he just tell his men, hey, make sure nobody gets close to that sword and the stone? No, he rounds up every person who might be Arthur and has them pull from the sword publicly where everyone can see it happen. Why? Why allow that to happen? Why give it an audience? And then once Arthur does pull it, why does he not just murder Arthur immediately?
I know.
Again, no, he has to take him prisoner, give him his whole villain monologue, and then set him up for like an elaborate beheading outside. No, just kill him. Who cares? Like, I hate that shit. And it's just like the movie just like needs those things to happen, as you said, and so it does it in the most stupid, convoluted way where the bad guy just ends up feeling like an idiot.
Arthur should have been like a grunt worker, working in the castle or some shit, and he's just kind of like stumbles across this sword, and he's like, "What's this?" And then he's like, "You know what? That's a sweet looking sword," and it's like calling to him or some shit, and his eyes glow, or the sword starts to glow, like he can see like a figment of his past, or he gets flashbacks, he touches it, boom, flashback moment, But nope, he just walks up and takes it in front of everyone. You're right. It is way dumber than we are saying.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if you remember this, but when I remember this in our last episode, we were talking about that movie's version of the sword and the stone scene, and you said you're like, I don't even know how that scene's going to happen in the next movie we talk about, but I bet it's going to be stupid.
Yeah.
and buddy, you were right.
Oh man.
Not to mention the version of this one also features a very like I don't want to say perplexing, because I guess I kind of get it, but a very distracting David Beckham cameo.
Oh, I know.
It's just like, oh, come on, man.
I know.
David Beckham as Trigger, the guard of the Sword and the Stone.
You didn't even mention it, but you know what? We've said this before in a previous episode. I think we were talking about Dredd, and we were talking about Eric Bana. Eric Bana plays Uther, Arthur's dad, the previous king. Can we just get a justice for Bana here? Like, that dude, he's just got bad agents or bad luck or something, because you know what? He should have always been a bigger star, but he's in this fucking garbage, a nothing burger role. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't... How is Eric Bana the guy in that movie?
I think my response to that would be, it's like, and I'm not saying it's like effective, but it's that here's the thinking, the Hollywood thinking behind that. I assume we know Uther's not going to be a big part in this movie. There's no reason. He's typically not a big part of Arthurian. He's Arthur's father. He's there to set up Arthur. But whenever you have a character like that, you want to get like an actor that has some weight, so that in as little screen time as possible, he still like says something to the audience, right? That's their thinking. I don't know if it's effective here, just because all we really get to see him do is fight in this big CGI nonsense battle at the beginning, which the movie just throws you into this battle between him and the forces of Mordred, the evil sorcerer, with no context, no build up, right? That's why I was just so annoyed instantly at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. So I was just like, what is happening? And it just like looked like trash. It was all dark and the CGI wasn't great. And it's just like, oh, this is the worst kind of blockbuster filmmaking, where it's just like, can we get like any moments of like humanity even briefly in here?
You're right. It's fine. I'm glad that we had the same opinion on the opening, because I was watching little reviews here and there on YouTube, just to see what people thought of this movie after I had watched it. And so many people like loved the beginning. And I'm like, that opening battle was so weird to me. Like, it is out of a different film altogether. I didn't know what the hell was happening. The score gets better later on, but the score sucked during that. It's clearly trying to be this epic thing, but it's falling flat on its face. And you just don't know what is happening. You signed up to watch a King Arthur movie, and you have 400-foot elephants, and then you immediately think, oh, these are just like the elephants from Lord of the Rings, that they're obviously meant to evoke that. But all of a sudden now I'm back to comparing movies. I'm back to, oh, you're reminding me of something way better than this. And that is Hollywood's, one of the biggest Hollywood sins in blockbuster filmmaking. Hey, it worked here. Let's remind everybody. Oh shit, it backfired, because now they're all thinking about the masterpiece that came before it. And they never, ever, ever learn. I just don't understand that. And just that beginning, just right away, I was like, oh God, Yeah,
no, I agree. And that's why, but unlike you, see, that's where once that scene was done, I was like, then we went into that super fast montage of Arthur being raised in Londinium. And I was like, okay, now I'm like more on board. Like, so for you were still disconnected. Right. But that's where I was like, well, at least I'm not watching dumb CGI elephants anymore. At least something interesting is like visually happening here. I think maybe you were alluding to this too, but we should, the shocking thing that I just thought was just, this is like one of those just baffling decisions, is the eventual reveal that the Sword and the Stone is Eric Bana. The stone is Uther's dead, calcified body, which that is revealed to us and then never matters. And I was just like, oh, that's pretty strange. Like, I've never seen that version done before. But also that we don't have any reaction of Arthur being like, you mean I fucking pulled a stone from my dead dad's body? Right? We just never, like, it's like one of those things, like, someone thought that was cool. Someone like pitched that in the writer's room. They're like, yeah, fuck, that's great, man. Throw it in there. And they just didn't think about, like, does that matter? Like, should we do it?
Does it make any sense at all?
Yeah.
No.
Does
it motivate our character? Does it feed the narrative? Does it build his character? Does it move the plot forward? Nope. It's just I even wrote it down. It's a quote unquote cool reveal.
Well, and let's speak about motivations, and let's use that as an opportunity to talk about Vortigern, our villain. Sure. Okay, so first of all, in this beginning part we're talking about, before we get to the modern set stuff, or not modern, but where the time period the majority of the film takes place. First of all, I was already annoyed by the big elephant CGI battle, and then the movie lost me again by introducing an actress I quite like, Katie McGrath, as the wife of Vortigern. And he takes, and this is interesting because I don't are you familiar with Katie McGrath? You probably are from Jurassic World, right? She's the one who gets like the horrible death.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that, but yeah, I can picture that.
Yes. So she's playing Elsa in this, which is Vortigern's wife. And she plays Lena Luthor on Supergirl. So that's where I know her from and really like her. And interesting enough, she played Morgana in the television series Merlin. So I don't know if this was just like a little like fun Easter egg for Arthurian fans or something, but it doesn't matter because she gets murdered 5 seconds into her appearance.
Yeah.
He takes her down to this cave, murders her, and we later learn that this was a blood sacrifice to this kind of
Squid chicks?
Squid chicks. Yeah, these like magical squid chicks who grant him now the power to take over the kingdom. I guess, but I think also like Mordred did. I don't like again. This is all confusing.
Question mark.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So like my assumption when as I said, I avoided this movie at the time, but I remember I think this is the common opinion. I was like, that movie looks like trash. I'm not going to see it, but I bet you Jude Law is awesome in it. I bet you Jude Law is going to be that kind of villain who hams it up and he's going to be a lot of fun. And I've seen a lot of reviews say that that's the case, but I ain't seeing it, man. And I think the problem is he's so underdeveloped. He is just bad because he's a bad guy. He wants to rule the kingdom and that's it. And there's like nothing more to him. And spoiler alerts, by the time you get to the end and he sacrifices his daughter to get more power, they play that moment as if it's like super emotional. You don't care about that relationship at that point because they haven't developed it at all. So again, let me put on my rewrite hat here.
Trevor Snyder rewrites the movies.
So imagine if like there was this, if you want to give this character motivation, right? Maybe early on in the early flashbacks, before jumping right into a battle, you establish that you have these two brothers, Uther the king and Vortigern his brother, and they both have children. And Uther, you know, he's a good guy, but he's kind of being a little bit over he's overdoing it in talking about how much his son Arthur is going to be the future ruler. And Vortigern is like, yes, I can't wait for my daughter to have like a high place in the kingdom as well. And he's like, well, your daughter is just your daughter, right? But Arthur, that's what it's all about. And that's what motivates Vortigern to do what he does, because he's trying to make a better kingdom for his daughter eventually. He wants to like pass this power on to her. And then over time, we watch him, though, get more and more corrupted by what he had to do and the place they put him in. To then when he kills his daughter, it's like, oh my God, she's the reason he did this in the first place. And he's now so far gone that he actually murdered the whole reason that he was actually trying to accomplish any of this. That would be interesting, so we can't do that. Instead, he's just evil. And I was like, so, because I like Jude Law a lot. I think Jude Law is actually the highlight of the Sherlock Holmes films. I think he's an amazing Watson. I know he can like ham it up and have a lot of fun. And he's just lost here in a nothing character.
There's one scene I did like that he handles really good. And it's like when he comes out to the crowd of all like thousands of people. And he just like raises his hand up to like stop them, and all to kneel. And then he like pans with his hand really slowly, and everybody like, you know, kneels while his hand goes over them. And this is like thousands of people doing it. And that was like cool. It's like this really cool moment that like I get his power. But that could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Jude Law. It could have been anybody that did that, and it would have been a cool moment. But when it comes to his character, it is just a total nothing burger. You know, like he's like you said, he's a bad guy. They didn't even need to give him a name, Vortigern. No, he's a bad guy. He's villain. Villaingern. Like that's it.
Well, and it's further complicated by the fact that when you finally get to the like, you know, the big final epic confrontation between Arthur and Vortigern, it's not even Vortigern.
It's not even him.
He gets like a CGI overlay over him essentially.
He looks like that painting, that Frank Frazzetti painting,
Death
the
Dealer.
famous one.
Yeah,
yes.
I couldn't. It's so ridiculously the Death Dealer. I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God. I hope Franzetta's estate got some cash for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the insinuation is that that's Mordred. By the way, okay. Okay, a couple things here. There's just my head exploded.
When you
First
said
of all,
that, I shrugged so hard to myself in my office. Like, who the fuck knows who that is?
Like, first of all, it just sucks that like you have these two actors, right? We're here to see Jude Law. You've billed him as the secondary lead. You're not going to have the final fight be a sword fight between Charlie Hunnam and Jude Law. You're going to remove Jude Law from the equation and just have it be this like CGI beast. Like, no, thank you. But beyond that, we haven't even talked about the fact that throughout this entire film, Vortigern is building a giant tower. Chris, why? Can you explain to me the purpose of the tower?
You know what? I forgot about the tower. So
I have a theory. You want to hear my theory?
Go on.
I think he's building a tower because Sauron has a tower in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And
totally.
they wanted a tower to collapse at the end of this movie when evil's defeated, because that's what happened in a more effective, popular series.
That is
absolutely.
Absolutely
Other than that,
right.
I couldn't figure out what the purpose was of that tower. They make a big deal about it. They talk about that's this whole thing where they're like, what would Vortigern like be most worried about? Oh, his tower. You know, that tower he's building. But I never understood the purpose of it. Because
I thought it was more of a metaphor for his masculinity and to create a phallic symbol. And at the end of the movie, him being brought down and hoisted on his own petard.
I guess it's not where his power's coming from, because that's the squid chicks. So
yes, the squid chicks that blew that if the squid chicks were a big thing and people would have saw this movie, it would have done wonders for the tentacle porn market. The squid chicks are very strange. I still don't really understand what the point of them is, or what they are, or what they're doing. Is this are squid chicks in Arthurian legend? Is this a thing?
Perhaps not that I remember, but yeah, when you say you don't know, like, yeah, they're never explained. And again, they kind of complicate the issue a little bit more, because it's like I thought Mordred was the one who like turned him evil, but then it's more revealed that like no, he was like in league with these squid chicks, and maybe he actually made Mordred bad. I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah, big time. Did you like when Arthur had to go on like a quest to like learn about his destiny, and they did it in a montage, and he fights a bunch of CGI beasties for about 3 minutes, and then he throws the sword away, and then the sword comes back like the mask from The Mask?
Well, I will say the montage with like the beasties I didn't really care too much about, but I will give the moment where he throws the sword away I did like. And I'll tell you, here's the thing. So
that was not earned at all. Get the fuck out of here.
Hold on. It's not about earning it. It's like in stark contrast to what I said earlier, to where I just wish this wasn't a King Arthur movie. Here are the two elements of King Arthur mythology that I liked in the movie. Whether it's earned or not, because this is another frustrating thing. I've never seen a movie with so much refusal of the call. Like, I get the refusal of the call is a big part of the hero's journey, but that's like all Arthur's doing through this entire movie. So yes, by the time he throws the sword away, you're kind of like just sick of this guy not accepting his destiny. But on a pure layer or level of enjoying Arthurian legend, I liked the way they used the lady in the lake in that moment. On just a pure like mythological visual level, I liked that he just threw the sword into the forest. Then he goes off to another area of the forest, and then she reaches up through like a puddle and pulls him down, and then gives the sword back to him. I did like that. I have to admit, I thought that was cool. It's just coolness in service of coolness, sure, but it worked for me.
May I just interject for a second while you're saying that? Because I agree with you. The visual of it is awesome, but what I felt that this movie was lacking, and regardless of Arthurian legend in or out of the movie, that's like a reveal of the backstory, because when that happens, it gives the backstory of the sword, and all of this stuff should have been in the beginning. You know, there's so much. When I say it's,
I don't necessarily agree with that.
When I say it's a jumbled mess, I just feel like it feels like it's out of order. Like that public execution scene that happens at 40 minutes, and it feels like we race to get there. It feels like that scene should have been right before, you know, the final battle, or again the reveal of the dad being the stone. Like why not just have that in the beginning? Why not know all the way before, and like the audience knows, and so we're waiting for Arthur to figure it out, that he's gonna realize, holy shit, that's my dad. But like the audience knows. I just don't understand why it's so jumbled up to protect the audience from the plot, even though we're here to see King Arthur. We know the legend to a point. Just show us. You don't have to show the characters in the movie. Show us. So I actually give a fuck when Arthur throws that sword away, because all I'm seeing is some dickwad that doesn't want it, and he's just this like beefed up tool boy, you know, and he just like, you know, I don't know.
I don't agree it needs to be at the beginning. I don't think it would be smart actually to front load the movie with all the information. I think any storyteller will tell you need to parse out some of this stuff.
No, I get that.
The problem is not the problem is not that where it comes in the film. It's that they don't do an eloquent job setting it up.
Right.
Like that actually is a good point in the film for him to learn the story of Excalibur, and that should at that moment you said, if this was like if people knew what they were doing, were writing this, that would actually be a very exciting moment where he throws the sword away. The Lady in the Lake presents the backstory to him, and he does realize, okay, yes, I will take my destiny on now. That should be exciting. The problem is the way they play it. You're already so sick of this guy, and then the next scene is his friends come up and go like, "Are you finally ready to go get Vortigern?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." It's like, "Oh, okay, cool." You know, like that's the problem at that moment.
I suppose you want to know what happened to me.
I don't want to push you, but George,
Riots are spreading. Not just in Londinium, across the whole country. People are fighting for you.
if there was ever a chance, it's now.
It's not going to last. But, like you said, we're not going to push you. I'm ready. We're going to take the castle. And we're going in the front door.
Before even he throws away the sword and he accepts his destiny, right before that, he gets his, like, you know, his big moment where he gets superpowers from the power sword. And he becomes like this CGI disaster of an action scene. And like, why didn't that happen after he accepts the sword?
Yeah, or I mean the other version of that, which would still also work, is he does that CGI nonsense. Not that I want it, because that scene sucks, right?
Oh.
But if you're gonna do it, then the reaction to it should be that scares him, right? He's like frightened of the sword and the power it gave him, and so then again when he throws away the sword, you're like, yeah, I get it, because that's like terrifying. They don't play that either, so they had like two options and they botched both of them, you know. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the sword, though, I just wanted to make sure I don't forget. I'm curious to hear what you think on this. The other bit of Arthurian thing, or element that I liked in this, which I've never seen done before, and I thought was like really actually pretty clever. So whoever came up with this, hats off. Is there's a cool moment near the end where Vortigern has Excalibur, and he's going to use it to kill Arthur. And they, Arthur and his compatriots, we'll talk about the character who does this in a moment, but they essentially like trick Vortigern or force him to swing his sword at a giant snake that's on a stone column. Ugh. And the sword embeds itself into the stone, and then he can't pull it out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know if like the Arthurian Excalibur legend is that it just sticks itself into any stone and only Arthur can pull it, but I liked it. I was like, that's pretty clever. And the fact that then he can't pull it out and only Arthur can, that was a bit where it's like, okay, I like that. You know what I mean? So those are like the two small things where it's like, okay, I wish those were in a better Arthur movie. Everything else, I wish this wasn't an Arthur film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He also goes after a giant snake that they never do before. Like, where did the snake come from? Why is there a giant snake? Why didn't we do this before? What happened to the rules of the movie?
Well, I mean, that's whatever. Like, this is the case of magic movies. This is why I don't like magic movies. I've talked to you about this before. Yeah. Like, this is a problem with magic. Is it's just Deus Ex snake. You know why there's a giant snake? Because of the mage. Yeah. Let's talk about the mage, Chris.
Yes, great. I love that we set each other up. It's a great segue. Let's talk about Astrid Burgess Frisbee.
The mage is, I get the female lead of the film.
Definitely not Guinevere.
Nope.
We'll never ever say that. Definitely not a female major character from Arthurian legend. We need all the boys in this movie.
Yeah. What did you think of the mage?
I mean, is there anything to say about her? Like, I mean, she's nothing. She's nothing at all. She controls animals when this plot needs to be, and she's barely there.
So it's strange because you and I both know from doing some research that this character was in fact meant to be Guinevere. Mm-hmm. That was the initial conception. And I'm imagining that was probably the case when they were talking to Elizabeth Olsen about the role.
Yeah. Because,
in fact, the decision to change it from Guinevere to the mage was a direct reaction to Astrid Burgess Frisbee being cast. During production, the connection to Guinevere was dropped and the character became the mage. Hunnam has ascribed the change to partly the film and partly the actor dictating that it is going to be something different. And I believe you have a little bit more of Charlie Hunnam talking about this, correct?
Correct, right here.
I would like to go back to King Arthur because there's a lot of things went wrong during that and a lot of things that were out of our control, and I just don't think we ended up matching the aspiration. We just didn't quite make the movie we wanted. And the idea was that in success we would have made several of those films.
Wow.
And I'm captivated by the Arthurian legends, and I just felt like we really missed an opportunity to tell a long form story.
Was there one thing that went wrong?
Yes. Yes.
There was
a piece of miscasting that ended up crippling the central storyline that's actually not in the film anymore.
Wow.
Oh. Yeah.
I read those words before finding that clip, and to hear his cadence, his voice, just his demeanor, very frustrating to me.
So when you played that clip for me initially, my first reaction was when he says like, yeah, there's one key element of miscasting that sunk the film. I was like, are you talking about yourself, buddy?
Exactly.
Exactly. And also then my second reaction was, I'm not the biggest Charlie Hunnam fan in the world. And that hearing him say that like made me feel better about that. Cause what an asshole.
I know.
So you and I just said like, there's not much to Astrid Burgess's Frisbee character in this. Like the mage is not a great character. She's not given much to do. She's just kind of there. But to like publicly trash her like that, because it's like clear that that's what he's talking about, since there's already this other information out about that character getting changed around. And also like the ridiculousness of looking at the critical reaction to that film and why everyone didn't like it and say, well, clearly the problem was with the mage.
Yeah. The character that's barely in the movie.
Yeah. Like that's not if that was Guinevere, if that was a character, that character was beefed up a little bit, this movie would still have a lot of problems. I was like really, really angry to hear him say that in that interview. I just felt bad for her, She's given this, like, she signed on to play this character that was originally meant to be bigger. They change it to this just nothing. This, like, magician who is, like, Merlin's apprentice, but that's it, right? That's her character. And then he's like, yeah, she's the reason the film sucked. Give me a break.
Yeah, like I wanted to do more, but unfortunately we cast this chick to ruin our movie. That's what he said. And it's weirdly, I do like when I hear actors just speak the truth in a weird way. Like I like when filmmakers just say the truth every once in a while, instead of just always in sales mode. But this one had like just a weird grossness to it, and especially because he sucks in this movie. I
like when actors speak the truth when it's like, this person I worked with was an asshole, nobody liked them, and they deserve to be exposed as that. Or the studio got in the way. There was like a bunch of things. But to say like, the problem with this whole thing was like one bit of miscasting, because that's not even like, he's not even like saying anything mean about her, but it's almost worse, right? He's just being like, she just couldn't bring what we needed for this like movie to work. Like if only she was a little bit better, this fucking 2 hours wouldn't be such a slog. What? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's I used to kind of be a Charlie. I don't want to say I'm Charlie Hunnam defender. I really don't want to say that. But this weekend, prior to watching this movie, I rewatched Pacific Rim. It's been a few years since I watched that, and I do still love that movie. I really do, and it's fun as hell.
But he's bad.
But he's bad in it, and it's weird because I've seen that movie probably like 3-4 times now, and this time I was very, very aware of it. And he is almost frustratingly bad.
No, Charlie Hunnam is what keeps me from loving Pacific Rim. Yeah. I like Pacific Rim, but I can never love it because he's just, I don't know. It's straight like I didn't watch Sons of Anarchy. I've heard he's good on that. I actually did like him in the Lost City of Z. I thought he was like pretty strong in that. But yeah, I don't know. Between Pacific Rim and King Arthur, this is definitely getting into like one of those like Hollywood just wants to make this guy happen, but he's getting cast in the wrong kind of roles, I think. Because here's the thing again. So go back to the version of the movie that I've been pitching, right? Where you remove all the King Arthur stuff and you make this like a more typical Guy Ritchie underground gangster movie, but in this time period. You know who like should have played this part? Now, it wouldn't work age-wise, right? But if you could make this movie like a long time ago, this actually should have been Jason Statham. This character needs that kind of like that glint in his eye and that like that ability to actually deliver sarcasm and still be kind of likable. Because when Jason Statham plays an asshole, you do still kind of like him.
Definitely.
Right? And that would solve what you were talking about. The problem is when Charlie Hunnam plays an asshole, you're just like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, yeah, he's a tool bag.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote down. I did write down. I found one of my notes. I did say that he makes for like a great street brawler. Like I totally buy him as that. But you're right because he'd be an asshole. but he's just not the hero that you want to rally behind. And
he doesn't command the screen, right? He doesn't You said that you wouldn't follow him, and I agree. There's nothing about this version of King Arthur.
Say what you want about the 2004 version. I know people still don't like that one, and it's because I think a lot of it has to do with the editing it down from rated R to PG-13. I definitely think that's a big part of it. But man, we said it in that episode, but Clive Owen commands the screen. He's King Arthur, and I know this is like later in his career. It's later. It's like right before he becomes the king. Like I get it, but there's something about you buy that this group of merry men, you know, or like, you know what I mean? Like you buy that these knights will rally for this person no matter what. And they do. And you're just so in here. And this isn't even with the main knights that we all know. Like, let's remind the listeners that Lancelot is not in this. Guinevere's not in this. Merlin is not in this. There's so, like who are the other ones that I'm thinking of? Name the other knights.
Got no Galahad, no Gawain, no Kay.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Wet Stick and fucking Flat Nose Mike or whatever. Like it's a baffling decision.
Now, to be fair, Chris, Wet Stick is revealed at the end to be Tristan.
Okay. Oh god.
Got you there, didn't they?
Yeah. Good. 4 stars.
Yeah, no, oddly enough, you know, a little fact about Charlie Hunnam, his current partner, her name, Morgana.
Oh God, this guy.
Is your mind blown?
This guy. He just really wants to make these sequels. He wants to make them so bad.
He wants to make them so bad that in 2005 he hooked up with this woman named Morgana. He's playing the long game.
Yeah, it's the long con.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, what else, man? I don't know. Like there's.
Can we talk about something good? And I will say, okay, so this is our score horror moment. I want to talk about this a little bit. So I mentioned in the beginning that the score like didn't do anything for me in the beginning, but then there's this scene that is full of energy. It's really fun, and it would have been great if it's not King Arthur and his people. But there's this chase around Londinium. And it's in the slums of Londinium. It's got some great stunt work. It's this chase, and they attach the cameras to the actors, so like the frame is moving with them. I always love that. I do like when that happens in movies. I'm always like, that's a cool visual flair. I do like that. And there's this track that plays, and it's just so filled with energy. There's this great drums to it, the strings to it, and then I didn't even name him. Daniel Pemberton is the composer that does it. I am not super familiar with him other than Into the Spider-Verse. I know that score was pretty good. Nothing super memorable. That movie was more memorable for the music in general, I would say, like the actual like needle drops. But the score for this one is cool because he adds this like breathing to it. So everybody's like running and panting through the streets, but also the score is panting with you. So it really ups the energy. It's really fun. I thought this track was awesome. And it's fun that me and you both wrote it down to include it for the episode. And I really dug it.
Yeah, and I don't want to call you out on this, Chris, but maybe you just forgot this because by the end of this movie you were just like half dead. But that same track that you love in that moment is the exact same track that plays over that montage you hate at the beginning that shows him growing up. They use that track twice. And I know this because, so to continue with score horror, I'll just say, I'm happy to hear that you liked that bit and maybe some other stuff because I think this score rips. I actually love this score. And since watching the film, I've listened to the score all the way through, independently of the film, a couple times, and I would highly recommend you do that.
Okay, I will.
It's definitely like the best part of the movie. Like,
that's one thing.
It's funny. No, I was just going to say, briefly, that I think he must have known how good that track was when he made it, because it's on the album like 4 times under a different title each time. They just keep like repeating it. But yeah, I think it's really cool. And like you, I'm not super familiar with Daniel Pemberton, but I feel like he's someone to keep an eye on now and watch because I did like his Spider-Verse score quite a bit. And you said that there was nothing too memorable. I would put up that the Prowler theme was awesome. Like that's a piece of music that I just like loved. And it's actually very kind of similar to some of the stuff he does in this. And then he also did the score to Birds of Prey, which again, I remember not super memorable, but very effective in the film. So he's someone I'm going to keep my eye on because I think like this might be like a new guy for us to pay attention to. And I really think he's doing some great stuff here.
Well, I'm glad you said that it's the score is good on its own to listen to, because that's always the test of a nice score. You know, like I love like the visuals are obviously manipulating me, but the score is manipulating the visuals. So it's this nice like merriment of each other. But when you sit down with your headphones on, like noise canceling ones, and listen to the score fully through, that's the real test. So I will absolutely take you up on that.
And well, in fact, what I was going to say is not only do I think it works on its own, but I'll put it this way. So here's the good with the bad. I think the score is awesome. I don't know if I think it's a great King Arthur score. I don't know if this score belongs in, again, a big high fantasy movie, right? So again, there's elements, like you talked about how like the score is not really working at the beginning with that like CGI battle. And I don't know that it's necessarily that the music isn't great. It's that it's not a great match for what we're seeing on screen. But when you're playing it over something like a montage of a guy being raised by prostitutes in the slums of Londinium, or thieves running and being chased by the cops, not the cops, but the knights through Londinium, right? Then it works. So the score has like this like really kind of, as you said, it has this like real modern feel to it. And then whenever it has to like contrast with more Lord of the Rings type stuff, it's not quite getting there.
On the notion of music, I know you wanted to talk about that song that plays.
That song is a great example, because there's a song from the soundtrack called, hold on, let me bring it up here. The song is called The Devil and the Huntsman, and it is Daniel Pemberton composing it and Sam Lee singing it. We can hear a little bit of it here.
Oh, brother dear, let my bed be made. Bright field, bright for the woody nightshade.
I think that song is awesome, but it's like so distracting in this film. What do you think? Like when it comes up in the movie, I'm like, no. But I really like the song on its own.
So I wrote down on my notes 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 30 seconds. Modern song. I fucking knew it was gonna happen, because this is the kind of stuff that I hate, and it has no place in this movie whatsoever. Is it a good song? Sure, it's fine, but it's like.
I don't think it's too modern, though. It's not like they're playing like Daft Punk or something. It has like an old, like kind of, folklore sound to it.
I guess. I don't know. It just comes down to my whole a blender of a bunch of things and ideas that is thrown into this film. And I think that one is almost like a blended song, to be put into this already blended movie. And it just... And to be honest, an hour and 40 minutes into the movie, I was already like, "Oh my god, let's get this fucking thing over with."
I think it's just, I think it's poorly used. They play it at like the scene where he's like, he's accepted his destiny now, and he's riding up to the castle to face his evil uncle, and it's just like, I get like it wants you to be like, yeah, fuck yeah, but it as much as I like the song, it's not getting you pumped for that battle. Like it's not the right emotional beat at that moment. Let's fucking wrap this up by talking about one of the dumber parts at the very end, shall we?
Yes, this is ridiculous. So
I literally like my jaw almost dropped for this.
Okay, so
I can hear through my headphones that you're like rubbing your temples right now. And I can't blame you.
I straight up was. I was face palming the whole time. Yeah. Okay, so listeners, you listen back to our Fantastic Four episode, and we mentioned a scene, and actually we played this whole scene in its entirety at the end of it, past our pimping of our socials. But this is what I hate about putting the cart before the horse and then trying to be fun about it. It also happens in Catwoman. What I mean is, these movies, these scripts, never want to just tell you what they are, even though you know what they are. So, example, Catwoman. They say, what is this? Some sort of cat lady, burglar woman. No, just say fucking Catwoman, okay? Just say it. Fantastic Four at the end, they're naming each other. What are we? The four amigos? What are we? The Thing and all their wonderful friends? No, just fucking say Fantastic Four. Just say it, okay? Just fucking say it. We signed up. I saw the poster. I've been sitting here for 2 hours. I know what this is. Stop playing coy. Let me just play the clip.
We've been wondering what you were doing in it. I like it. What is it?
Yes, what is it? A carousel? A giant wheel of cheese? What are you supposed to do with it?
I know.
It's a dance floor. And once you finish it, how are you supposed to get to the middle? Well, how did you get it through the door? Did you carry it in or did you roll it in?
Dude. What is wrong? Why aren't we famous? Like, let me write a script, please. Because this movie cost $200 million, and that's what we get.
I'm sitting here watching a 2-hour King Arthur movie, and you lead me to a scene, and it's dumb for all the reasons you just said, but let's not overlook the dumbest thing about it. You lead me to a scene where I learned that our main characters don't know what a table is.
It's amazing. A dance floor?
A block of cheese? It's a fucking table. Look at it. Why are you so stupid?
God, they're so dumb.
And it commits the sin too. Like, it doesn't ever explain, like, you know, King Arthur, the 2004 one, did the work of saying the reason Arthur has the round table so that there's no head to it. Here it's just like, I don't know, I guess he decided he wanted a table in the room. Like, there's no explanation to it. It's that thing, oh God, it sucks, right? Where it's just like, as a King Arthur movie, we got to have the round table at the end. And it's just clearly like plopped in to be like, there you go. There you go. He's got his table now. Aren't you excited for the next one?
Yeah, tune in next week. And you're so right. They are such dumbasses. I couldn't believe that there was, and dude, I was expecting that scene to like take a turn that they were all just breaking each other's balls. I really thought that like, maybe was what was going to happen.
When Arthur actually says it's a table, you sit at it, that should have gone farther. Like, he should have been like, are you guys fucking idiots? Like, it's what... I'm okay. Never mind. You're not my knights. Get out of here. I can't deal with this.
You're all immediately fired. You're immediately fired because you don't know what a table is. I cannot trust you when you go into battle with me. Like, be gone. It was a staggering level of stupidity on a script level. Trev, okay, let's really dial in here, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's pick this apart. The script is written, okay? Multiple times, obviously. On the day, before the day, during the day, after, post, doesn't matter. There's a lot of ADR. It's written many times. Not only is it written many times, it's filmed. The script is given to the actors. They read it. They talk, they probably discuss with their director, how do we want me to do this, and yada yada. They have a discussion about the scene. It's filmed. The lighting guys are there. The gaffer's there. The best boy grip. The boom mic guy. And nobody, not even in post-production, Trev, nobody said, this is so fucking dumb. Nobody took it away. Nobody edited it out. Of all the things, they edit out the fucking mage, but they don't edit out that. They don't change it in post. They don't. It is like a staggering level of stupidity. I'm sorry. I'm sorry going off on this, but
no, you're right. They were too busy going, hey, that woman that we cast to play Guinevere, turns out she can't play Guinevere. Let's change it to the mage. Which, by the way, we didn't even say this like that. Kind of a bad look on you guys, right? That you went through the entire casting process and like, yeah, she's good. And then you're like, whoops, never mind. So whatever. Problem's not on her, but
can I actually slight segue from that? I joked before, like, this is the only female character in the movie, and honestly, she kind of is. And I even use the word character loosely. But this is why this movie failed. Okay, not only for all the reasons we've said, but this movie is for the boys. And the Arthurian legend has a great romance to it. It has a great love triangle to it, for better or for worse. But there's still some sort of romance or heart or I guess romanticizing the Arthurian legend is what I would say. But there's something about making a bunch of burly dudes being super like obnoxious and annoying and taking that thing that makes Arthurian legend interesting. Like, okay, the 2004 version took away the love triangle for the most part. Mm-hmm. But Keira Knightley was fucking awesome. Yeah. And she was an incredible character. You totally bought in. She was a complete warrior. She was awesome. In this, it's just a bunch of guys. And not only that, Trev, you're going to like this. This movie came out on Mother's Day weekend. Mm-hmm. Do you know what it went up against?
Tell me.
I don't know if you remember, but there was a little movie with Amy Schumer and Goldie Hawn that was billed for Mother's Day weekend called Snatched. So the movie Snatched beat out Guy Ritchie's film King Arthur, and Guy Ritchie also made a movie called Snatch. So Snatched hoisted Guy Ritchie on his own petard. Is that strange?
Yeah, good. Now, to be fair, Chris, the mage is not the only female character. Are you forgetting about Maggie, played by Annabelle Wallis?
Oh my God, you're right. I'm looking at the cast list.
You probably are, because that is a character that is so inconsequential. I just noticed that she is never once mentioned in the entire Wikipedia plot synopsis of this film, and it doesn't matter. But she is the secondary female lead. I want to ask you, Chris, because I watched the whole movie, and Annabelle Wallis is an actress I know, and she's great in Peaky Blinders. She was really good on The Tudors. But can you explain to me what her role was in this film? How was she a member of the court? Because basically her whole role is she's in Vortigern's court, and she ends up being like their inside person who's giving information to Arthur and the other his compatriots, right? But like, who is she? Tell me, Chris.
Fucking beats me, man.
Yep. Yeah.
Beats me. Like literally nothing.
To be good news for Annabelle Wallis though. Like, it could be really embarrassing that she was in this, but thankfully for her, the same year she did go on to appear in The Mummy.
Yeah.
So
excellent.
Great 2017 for her. Final thoughts before we talk about like the aborted plans.
Honestly,
you kind of liked it, huh?
Not really. Yeah. Oh, actually, this is. I really think that Charlie Hunnam's going to go places. Yeah, no, nothing. No. I think I said it all. I would just be repeating myself.
Yeah, I'll just say like the last thing I'll give it some credit for is, again, if you want to try and find diamonds in the rough here, kind of nice to see a King Arthur movie with a multicultural cast. We kind of poke some fun at like Kung Fu George and stuff like that. But I like that Tristan is played by an African-American actor in this. I like that there is an Asian member of the Knights of the Round Table. That's something, again, I wish was in a better Arthur movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is a complicated one because I don't like this movie. I don't think it's good, but I'm not sure I think it's bad enough to tell people to never watch. I think if you are, like me, a Guy Ritchie fan, I would say give this a casual go someday when it comes on TV or something and you have some time. Because I just to see if you agree with me that there's these little nuggets pieced throughout where you go, there's a version of this where you get the script early, rewrite it, rework it a little bit, and you make this just a fun movie. I'm sticking with King Asshole as the title. This could have been a fun movie about a group of assholes who somehow get their hands on Excalibur, and just what is the fallout of that? And you play it like a good old school Guy Ritchie movie, but in a medieval trappings. Cut out all this CGI nonsense. Don't give me any scenes where once he unsheathes the Excalibur, he turns into a CGI sprite and jumps around the screen like Yoda in Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
Just let it be down and dirty, like 2004's was doing a much better job. And I think this could have been something, but ultimately, nope. Hollywood excess wins again.
So let's say this succeeds. And remember, they planned 6 films that they wanted to make. So Trev actually had a great idea. He texted me a few days ago being like, hey, we should plan out the 6 movies. Or the following 5 from the first movie.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd tell each other live on the show that, what would be our order? Who would they focus on? Because that was always the original idea, was that these sequels were going to kind of be, I don't want to even use the word spin-offs, but definitely focused on certain characters. So I have my list. Trev has his. I even came up with, I didn't come up with it, but I always felt like there was a naming convention that could be used here. So I have my 6 films. Trev has his. Do you want to go first, and then I'll do mine, and we can rattle them off? Or do you want to go, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back and forth, or?
I don't think there's any purpose in going back and forth. I'll tell you what mine are, and then we'll see how close yours are, right?
Sure.
Especially because you came up with like full names and everything.
Yeah.
So I'll say I was looking at it like, so you're telling me there's 5 more movies to go, and you're calling the 6th one a team-up one. So, okay, in my mind, that means there's 4 more solo kind of movies. Again, this is weird because this isn't the Avengers, right, where you have Captain America, Iron Man. King Arthur's about King Arthur. And then you have a bunch of like supporting characters. So now you're elevating all these supporting characters. So I think it would have been only natural that the next movie would have been focused on Lancelot, who is, obviously the secondary big, character, the big Knight of the Round Table, who's not featured in this film, as you said. So I believe the second film probably would have been a Lancelot movie to introduce him. I think the third film might have been a Merlin film, because we also don't have Merlin in this. It's pretty crazy that you and I have done 2 Arthur movies this month, and neither of them, I mean, there's a version of Merlin in the Clive Owen one, but we haven't had like a real version of Merlin,
No, not at all.
Weird. This is where it gets complicated for me, or like a little tricky. I think the next one might have been a Guinevere movie, since they cut her out of this one and changed the mage. Because I feel like at some point they would have been, we got to have a female-led one. So I think maybe they would have introduced Guinevere. And I think maybe they actually would have done something like what you were insinuating, where maybe they would have tried to make like the cool, badass female warrior version of Guinevere, as they did with Keira Knightley, so that she can slot more into this world. But who knows? The fourth movie, I was kind of torn between it being Gawain or Galahad, but I think ultimately it probably would have been Galahad. I think maybe we would have got a Galahad movie as the fourth film. And then I did come up with what I assumed the title for the sixth film would be, and I'm curious to see if this is what you agree with as well, or I'm eager to hear yours. I do think the sixth film would have been called Knights of the Round Table. I think that seems like that's what they're building to. Or Knights of the Disco Dance Floor, or whatever the fuck. But that's where I think they're heading.
Knights of the Slums of Londinium. Okay, so we are not close at all, which I think is interesting. Okay, I'll just tell you. So the first movie is obviously called King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Well, I thought, I read about that the name was changed multiple times and in the production and what they were going to call it. So I felt I felt that the colon Legend of the Sword was going to be the naming convention. Legend of. So I felt like we'd keep with that. We always call it King Arthur. You got to keep King Arthur. So the second film, I actually have King Arthur, Legend of Guinevere. And the reason why is because they introduced her as the mage, and they would have to, at this point, reveal that she's Guinevere. And all of a sudden now, like, they can't wait that long to make that reveal. She can't be called the mage for the next couple movies. She has to be like...
You don't think that they were just going to drop Burgess Frisbee out of this and introduce Guinevere as a new character?
I'm saying if this was succeeded, because Hunnam couldn't have said that, and it would have made a bunch of money, and he wouldn't have been an asshole about it because he would have got his paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So Guinevere, you add her. Fuck it, recast her. Who gives a shit? We don't even remember who the mage is. You know what I mean? The mage could be anybody. Hell, you know what? The mage could be Annabelle Wallis at this point. It doesn't even matter. Just reveal that a character that we were come to know in the first movie is Guinevere. Now we add the romance angle, right? So now we have something to latch onto. It's not just King Arthur. It's King Arthur and love interest. So that'll increase the drama. For the third film, now we introduce King Arthur, Legend of Lancelot. And the reason why is now you can introduce the infidelity angle, that he's getting involved he's the wedge between Arthur and Guinevere, and he's adding, like, there's issues there. There's the cheating. There's some sort of drama that we can I don't want to say rally behind, but definitely care about. Now the fourth film, this is actually called King Arthur, Legend of the Knights, and I think you have to introduce them as a group. So Galahad and Gawain and maybe some other guy in there too, but make it kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy parallel. So now we're going from, big fun action sci-fi movie to romance movie to infidelity to drama film, now to the fun middle one that we get to introduce all of the crew. And it's, again, I really do feel like the Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, like wisecracking, this and that. So then you grow to love the Knights from when they eventually team up. Now the fifth film, Finally, before the team-up film, you have to add in the magics. And you can go balls to the wall magics. So this now is called Legend of Merlin. And the stakes are immediately heightened. It's like almost like Thanos has arrived. I know Merlin's a good guy, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like it's making that, we all need to come together because the magics are back. And we have to figure that out. And Merlin, you can even make in the beginning that he's a threat, and then he becomes kind of like a good guy by the end, of course, or he's a threat the whole way through. And then you get to the team-up film, King Arthur, Legend of the Round Table. So we were very close on that one. But Legend of the Round Table is the team-up, maybe against Merlin. Who knows? Because you know what? At this point, we're playing fast and fucking loose with the mythology. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
I don't think they would have had Merlin be a villain, just because they were making pretty clear in this film that he ran away because of Mordred being so bad.
Hey, you know what? You would also think that, I mean, I don't know, but this that's a hard one to say, but
it's strange because what threw me off about the whole thing, this is why when they said the sixth movie would be the team up movie, that's what sounded weird, right? Because that is insinuating that each movie is about a different character, and you're waiting for them to all come together, but they don't come together to the last one. And that's where I was thrown off, because that, to me, then I'm thinking, does that just leave Charlie Hunnam and Arthur out for like the next few films? Like, what are you doing? You know, if they're not teaming up until the sixth film, how are they going to coexist in these other movies? Like, it's just strange. Like, whatever their plan was makes no sense.
Oh no, it is a total bastardization of any type of plan. Like, it's really bad. But that's the reason why I think you have to introduce them this way. It's like you keep Arthur in the films, but the focus is on the backstory Guinevere, then Lancelot, then the knights, then Merlin, and then then he leads them into battle against the big bad. Who's the big bad in Arthurian legend? I have no idea.
Mordred, but a completely different version. Well, there's the big bads are Morgana Le Fay and Mordred, but definitely different versions of them. And the other big bad would be infidelity.
Well then, well then, let's say that then instead of Merlin being the bad guy, it's like Merlin comes in because like, whoa, we got this Morgan Le Fay coming in here, and we gotta rally the troops. But thankfully, none of this happened, and this movie died a painful death.
Yeah, and it's all the mage's fault. I will say, though, I'll say one last nice thing about it, if you'll allow me.
No.
If you've ever been waiting to see a King Arthur movie where Arthur calls someone honey tits, this is probably the best one.
Or Jude Law dropping an F-bomb, because this is not your grandfather's Arthur movie.
David Beckham wouldn't be in your grandfather's Arthur movie.
Oh, God. I mean, that's King Arthur.
And The Legend of the Sword.
And Legend of the Sword, 2017. Skip it. But don't listen to Trev. But next, what are we doing? So we wrapped up Arthurian April here. And then we're moving into a great summer. I'm excited for this.
Yes.
This is what Trev said in a previous episode. This is the reason why he even signed on to do this. Has he been paid? Absolutely not. But it is Mila Jovovich. It's a 4-film wallop of Mila Jovovich.
We will be watching Ultraviolet, Paul W. Sanderson's The Three Musketeers, the Hellboy reboot, and The Fifth Element.
Yes.
So all 4 films starring or featuring Mila that were meant to lead to franchises and of course didn't. I'm super excited. Love Mila. Mila Jovovich promises to be the podcast event of the summer. And just a little peek at, why don't we just tell them, Chris? I think even following that up, we've got a really fun plan because we've been doing some theme stuff. But we finally realized that if we kept sticking with these themes, there's a lot of films that I don't know. I feel like we're not super excited to get to, and maybe we've been kind of like, putting off a little bit by concentrating on these themes. So we decided to do something interesting for the rest of the summer. You want to tell them about that too?
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be doing a little something we like to call Summer Surprise. That's going to span from July and August, so there's going to be 5 episodes total in that time. And what we're going to do is, I guess, probably in one of the episodes following, we're going to randomize the entire list of like 150 movies that we got.
Not necessarily the entire list. I'm going to leave out some of the ones we know are coming up in themed ones later.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
These are going to be kind of the one-offs and the grab bag movies. Yeah.
But we're going to randomize them and pick them on air, and we're just going to commit. So I'm looking forward to that. I love a theme, but this one, I mean, technically this is a theme. But it's going to be fun to kind of do it and get our immediate reactions for something like, whatever, pops
I'm pulling so hard to get Oogie Loves starring Carrie Elways. Please.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Can there be vetoes?
Should we say like each of us gets one veto?
Yes.
Okay.
Or no, maybe.
Yeah, no vetoes. You know what? Forget it. Let's commit.
Let's commit. And then also, I was just thinking, I was like, because of my simulation theory of feelings, I hate Carrie Elways so much that I know it'll be one of them. So I just, you know what? I don't want to test fate. So we'll just commit. But other than that, if you want to follow along on our journey this summer, that is 2021. Follow us at F2FPod on Twitter. That's at F2F on Twitter, Insta, Facebook, all that fun stuff. Check your podcast app for the links to our letterboxd, all that fun stuff. I keep saying fun stuff. I don't know why I say that. Rate, review, whatever you do. Like us there, like us everywhere. And definitely join the tribe and hit that subscribe. It'll be fun.
Chris, what about King Arthur Legend of Whetstick?
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.